when you do something with everything you got and you stop worrying about the outcome. Like you fall in love with the process. And because you fall in love with the process, you get a lot of rewards that you would have never tapped into.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. Any indices referenced for comparison are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate and actual performance may differ. As always, please remember investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. Please seek advice from a licensed professional.
And we are back to the Know Your Risk podcast, and this is an interview that I've been waiting a long time. We were joking off air. We were trying for years, literally, to put this thing together, and for whatever reason, it took way too long. But Eric Boles, President and CEO, founder of the Game Changers Incorporated, and a lifelong friend and mentor to me, and couldn't be happier to have you here, man. Welcome aboard.
Oh, thanks for having me, my brother. I'm so grateful this has finally happened. It's kind of exciting, Zach, because, we get to share publicly all the conversations we have privately. So, no, this is great, man.
Well, and that's and one of the things that we did when we reformatted the show, and I told everybody that listens that I kind of want to do a different series, for lack of a better term, like self-help. Mm-hmm. And by that, I mean all of the things that have helped me get to where I am today, the practices, the people, because, I know you know this all too well, but and I've fallen victim to it too in my life, which is I'm not getting those results because I'm not one of those people, right?
That's right.
And I think we've all been there, and what you find out is no. It's not those people. It's what they do, right? And that you can do the same thing. So kind of, I wanted to do that. And naturally, you have been a very key component of that process with me, kind of intersecting my life at many different times where it was certainly most advantageous. But before we get into that, why don't we tell a little bit about you, where you came from, which naturally will lead into our intersection, I believe, when I was about 15 years old. So yeah, give your backstory and where you're from and how you and I came together.
No question. No, appreciate that, Zach. I'm getting old. That's crazy. When you were 15, I think I might have been 25. I don't know, 27, right, somewhere around that time. But I'm a Tacoma boy, so grew up in Tacoma, Washington, Foss High School, went from the Tacoma, Washington, where I was going to school and high school. Basketball was my love, but I actually went to college for football. Played at Central Washington University over in Ellensburg, Washington. Played there for 4 years. By the time I was a senior, well, really by my junior year, going into my senior year, playing football, there wasn't a whole lot of 6'3.5", 6'4" wide receivers, especially playing at that level. And so something caught me by surprise. I was being scouted, and we would have NFL scouts coming to Ellensburg, Washington to watch me practice. And it was all exciting, but I didn't ever assume it to be real because nobody had ever really left Central and went to the NFL. And then by the time my senior year comes around, this is way back in 1992. So you got some listeners who probably were just born, right? Or not. But I ended up getting drafted in the 11th round by the New York Jets. And so I go from Ellensburg, Washington over to from Ellensburg to New York City. I had the opportunity to spend some time in the league. I am the definition of what you would call a journeyman, someone who was in the league, talented enough to get to the league, but not mentally tough enough to stay in the league. And we'll lean more into that as we talk, Zach, as we go forward. But after leaving the NFL and heading back home. I go from the Jets. I'm in San Diego for a cup of water, like a brief moment. That was a tough experience, right? We were talking about that one too. And then I finished my career in Green Bay, which was probably the biggest catalyst in what I do today. So my learning in terms of leadership, business, organizational alignment, structure, everything. Probably my biggest aha moments came from my time in Green Bay. I was very fortunate to have a little time there before I was, as Ron Wolf, who was the general manager at the time for the Green Bay Packers, it pulled me in his office and he says, "You have just been promoted to fan." That's another way of saying, that's
Ouch.
another way of saying you've just been released, you've just been fired. But that was, the what kind of led to us connecting, because once that happened, I came back to Tacoma, trying to figure out what I was going to do next. I find myself playing basketball at the downtown YMCA, run into a guy named Chuck Johnston, whose son played on the team. Yeah.
There we go.
There we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
And Chuck introduced me to Mike Ballison, who was coaching at Bellarmine High School, and how all the worlds came together, because I had already spent a lot of time with Scotty Kessler, who was connected to PLU, where Frosty Westering was the coach, and Frosty's philosophy was something I had never heard before, but it just blew my mind. Come to find out, I'm coaching at Bellarmine, where they're doing the same thing. And once I get to Bellarmine and I'm coaching the DBs and I'm working with this defense, and I run into this kid who's about 5'5", 5'4", right? Who had the audacity to say, "I'm going to play middle linebacker."
Yeah. That was only because I was too slow to play running back. That was the only reason.
And it just blew my mind, because he would just kill it. I mean, tackle and take on anybody who'll come through the hole. But the thing I loved, he actually, and that was you. That was Zach Abraham. And I will say it and say it again. Zach played from the knees down like no one's business I ever seen. I mean, you filled the hole. You took out people low every single time. You didn't ever back away. It was just the best. Right? And
man.
I'm going to be honest with you, man. I fell in love with you at that moment. I did, bro. Like what they say, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. And I was like, no, the other line that I would give for you, not to talk too long, but like, it was always cracked me up. You had a certain level of what I would call unjustified confidence.
That is so true. That is so true. But when you're a 5'9", 200-pound linebacker, you better have that, or you're in trouble.
Exactly right. That's exactly right, bro. That's exactly right. But you did. I was having jokes, but I was like, dude, I mean, you played bigger than you were. And look at the success we had. I mean, there wasn't a lot of games we would necessarily win pregame. We didn't win coming off the bus, and everybody looked at
Oh, never.
We didn't,
No.
never won
Yeah.
those games, but we ended up winning games, right? And so, anyhow, that's where
that whole program was a model of that, and I know became a model for you and a model for my business and all that stuff. So when you were so that gets us to where we were at, and this is something that you and I have never really dug that deep into, because we're always thinking about other more particular things that we're both dealing with now. But where did that start? Because the where you're at now, you started that while you were coaching at Bellarmine, right?
Yeah,
Loosely.
that's right.
Right.
Yep.
So
So what happened was, it was two things. It was kind of a combination, two or three things, actually. It was a perfect storm. So once I came back home from being released by Green Bay, and full disclosure, I really struggled, because I was struggling from an identity standpoint, because my job description and my identity were one and the same thing. And so when I was no longer a professional athlete or played in the NFL, I didn't know who I was. Like it was hard enough trying to stay in the league, and then you're no longer in the league, and then you come out of the league. Like what replaces that experience? And I didn't know yet, right? And so being able to coach, which was great, but when I started coaching at Bellarmine, it gave me a real insight on what total release performance looks like, and how to compete. Even the definition of the word competition, the root word of that is the word competere, which means to strive with, not strive against. It was the first time I played on a team, and we actually prayed that the opponent would play the best game of their lives so we could discover what was in us. It was the whole philosophy that Frosty Weston would talk about over at PLU, because I went to college at Central, so we played each other all the time. We were always the most talented team by a long shot. But then my senior year, here I'm going to the NFL. We have other guys who got shots, and we lose to PLU in the last game to see how did we lose to them. But part of the reason we lost is because their willingness to just compete and leave it all on the field and just embrace the competition and love of it, you would see miracles take place. And Zach, if we ever broke down our experiences at Bell, there were games we won that were just miraculous.
Yeah.
And people thought, like, they get so lucky. No, that's what happens when you do something with everything you got and you stop worrying about the outcome. Like, it's you fall in love with the process. And because you fall in love with the process, you get a lot of rewards that you would have never tapped into if you didn't learn that. I could only learn that through football, through something I was passionate about. Once I discovered it through football and watching it even at Bellarmine, that's why I'm so grateful for Boles to this day, Scotty Kessler to this day, like learning those things. When I started to get into business in the way that I am, I realized you want to talk about what's missing in business. Whether it's boardroom or teams coming together, I realized there's not a whole lot of leaders out there who really understand how to bring a team together, who really understand how to get the most out of those who are there working. They can bring in people who are extremely competent, but they didn't know how to feed people with confidence that multiplies that level of competence to a level of performance that can't be tapped into unless that kind of performance is demanded. And that's what sport did for us, right? And I've just been fortunate to flow that into, 20, 25 years later into business like I do today.
Now, while you're talking about this, we're using terms, and I know people have heard about that, fall in love with the process before, but we're using terms where that's one of those things when you hear it, if you don't truly understand it, you immediately brush it aside. And, there they go again, right? They're so, but once you know it, and you've lived it and experienced it, there's a different reaction. You say it, you see a little twinkle in somebody's eye because they understand that not only do you fall in love with it, but you find out that the process is actually the reward, right?
Boom.
Like that.
Boom.
That's it.
Boom. Boom.
Right?
You just hit it, man.
Explain. Yeah.
I think somebody who said it recently, even for those who are listening right now who might not be golfers, you might not be a golfer, but if you in golf, there's a gentleman who's clearly the best in the world, hands down the best in the world. His name's Scotty Scheffler. Scotty recently did an interview that went viral, and everybody was talking. I've had some of my clients, those leaders I executive coach, would ask me about it. One particular, he was like, "Man, what did you think about Scotty Scheffler's statement about winning majors aren't that big a deal, or being?" And he goes, "What do you think about that?" As soon as he said that, I sat there and I smiled and I went, "Well, I'm scared for all of his opponents." Okay.
Right.
Because he tapped into the magic, which is, I love the competition. Winning it is just icing on the cake. But I'm free to the tougher it is, the more I enjoy it. I enjoy just the pursuit of it. It's embracing it. But the outcome is a secondary benefit. Because when Scotty Scheffler said, I thought it was going to be more rewarding. And then he realized after holding the trophy 5 minutes later, we put it up and I just still go eat dinner with my wife and my family and my kids. And, nothing changes. This is what I discovered when I got to the NFL. This is what I discovered when the NFL went away. And then when I became successful in business, my assumption was once I get successful in business, it's going to replace what I didn't get playing football, only to discover that, yeah, it ain't all that great either. It doesn't mean I prefer it than not being successful. I'm just saying I discovered that in itself isn't enough. It was actually the journey there. And Zach, we can talk about this. Like, if we win a championship, whether you win a championship or not, the things that we always talk about as a team is never those final games. It was always the tough practices. It's always that one game we had to come back. It was always the difficult. It's the journey that we embrace so much. It's the process that we felt so alive. One of the things I push for with even many of the clients I work with in the organizations that we do so much consulting with is there are very few things in your life that you're going to do where you actually feel what we call flow. When you lose yourself in the process. It's just the journey, the discovery, the grind. You're fully engaged in something. There's very few things that cause you to get there like work does. As crazy as that sounds to folks, sometimes the most accomplishing sense of progression you ever make is found in work. When you're solving problems and you're finding new ways to take something to a new level, and it creates a different energy. Once you reach the goal, sometimes the energy or the air that allowed you to float to that level leaves the building, and you're sitting there going, okay, what next? I was a big Game of Thrones fan, and I forget early in that series, one of the kings, I think it's King Baratheon, and there's a line he says where he says, "I never felt so alive pursuing this throne, and I've never felt so dead now that I have it." Right, and so it's not really a message of not being satisfied and always setting big goals, but actually getting more excited about the process of going towards your goal. Because what happens to you on the pursuit of the goal is far more valuable than accomplishing the goal itself. Because the change that happens with us stays with us, right? I mean, and that's why the conversation we're having right now is like, what we're really celebrating is, and talking about is, not where we're at right now or what we've accomplished or what may be recognized publicly or what the bank accounts may look like. Actually, we're talking about getting excited about when we were in the gym and nobody was there, right? Like when I was pushing it and there was no audience but me, those moments where you thought, why am I trying to do this? I don't think this is going to, what have I done? I'm out here alone. My family's depending on what decision did I make? And then be able to look back and go, oh, I'm so grateful. I kept going and I kept moving and I kept doing it. You said something at the beginning that I don't want missed. You said I wanted to shift the podcast or the theme to more about self-help. When people hear self-help, too often they mean, like I'm going to just help myself. Like I'm doing, it's self-help. But that doesn't mean you're just doing it yourself, right? I mean, it's self-help, but it's the help of others helping you. So one of the things when it comes to self-help, look, what I learned from that process is where can I go and ask for help? And usually the people that I ended up getting exposed to, the help they gave me was almost always opposite of what I thought I was going to receive. I always thought, like, I never forget I had a mentor of mine, and he's, his company, his organization is well known here in the Pacific Northwest, Tacoma area. Actually, it's and I don't mind, it's Norm LeMay. So if you know LeMay, car museum and all the incredible success he's had over the year and the family and their story. And I've had other leaders in my life do the same thing. And one of the most difficult moments I ever gone through, and I'm sitting down with him and, I'm still trying to figure this entrepreneurial world out. And really what I think I need is like some capital, like working capital, right? I can use some resources, right? I'll never forget describing the circumstance I was in. And it was like he got so excited, Zach. He started smiling and he leaned in and whatever. And one thing he did not do is ever pull out a checkbook. At no point did he give me $1. And it was so powerful because that's what I wanted, but he knew that's not what I needed. He goes, no, you don't need more money, my friend. What you need is this lesson. You need this because what you need is wisdom. And then when you get the wisdom, the money will follow. And if I got the money before the wisdom, my father would say all the time, don't come to me for money and not get my wisdom. Because if I give you money without the wisdom, the money will run out and you'll be back for more money. Right? What you need is the wisdom. And so when we're having these conversations, that's what it's all about, man. How do I garner as much wisdom from others, their experiences, their lessons, and how do I make sure it's not those people who got there? No, usually those people who've been successful and really effective, those people are really good at what? Paying attention, listening, going out and using what they just heard, practicing, getting some feedback, and then come back again going, man, what am I doing with it this way? Zach, you would do that with me every week. We used to meet, I don't know how early in the morning, where every week, I think it was 5:30. 5:30. We will, once a week, we'll all come together. Right. Rather, you will leave that with your notes. Go implement. It didn't matter if it was business related, with your wife, as a father, whatever the case may be, per individual. And then you'll come back the next week, man, I did this, and this is what happened. Is there an adjustment? And what people don't understand is to succeed in this life, there's no excuses that go along with success. There's only adjustments, right? Like it's just adjustments. And so this is the reason I believe I wasn't successful. So what adjustment do we make to keep going? Because the word success is actually an agricultural term. It actually means from succeeder. What it means is to come up through. So anything that's considered successful is never the end result. Success many times is measured by what did it go through to get to the place that it's at. That's the best way to evaluate whether or not something's successful.
That's fat. I've never heard that before, and it makes all the sense in the world because, like what we're talking about, and I've said this before on the show, but if you want to be really disappointed in life, right, try to do some really hard things and focus on what you'll get from those things, right? And once you get them, I promise you're going to be deeply, deeply disappointed, whether it's money, whether it's fame, whatever the case may be. What you will not be disappointed with, as a matter of fact, what you'll be thrilled with, is when you look back, looking at what you overcame to get there, right?
Oh my God. Oh, Zach, that's it. Because of I was with PricewaterhouseCoopers this week, and so I just got back from Dallas, and I've been very fortunate. They are a great client, PwC. They're one of the big four, right? One of the big four accounting firms in the world. And I've had the wonderful opportunity to spend time with their partners at the very top. I've worked with many of their directors, senior managers, their VPs. And this last week, which was one of the greatest rewards, I got to work with many of their deal managers, which are leaders who've been in the company probably no less than 5 years. So a lot of them just came out of college, bro. That's the only job they've had. They're about 5 years in. They're now managing or leading teams for the first time. Not only are they leading teams for the first time, they're the front line. They're the face for these major deals. They facilitate mergers and acquisitions. The audits, so many things that they do for these groups. And as we were talking about what some of those key qualities of leaders are, when I was asking a question and hearing some of the answers, I think it even was an open. I mean, it blew their own minds in terms of what they identified as what makes good leaders. Not one of them mentioned competency. Not one of them talked about intelligence or in terms of around the numbers. Being a good accountant or actuarialist, like none of those things got mentioned. You heard stuff like, resiliency, integrity, perspective, all those things that many people would call soft. But the reality, they were the most important thing. And when I sat there and I said, so if these are qualities that need to be developed, where are they developed? They are never developed when things go well. Like, how in the world do you get resiliency when everything's working in your favor? Right? Come on, bro. How do you develop patience when everything you start finishes in a hurry? I mean, if we just listen to ourselves, the very thing we spend time complaining about are the very things we need to develop the qualities needed to be successful. And so we're going to complain. I get it. It happens. But sometimes we just got to be reminded that that is the very material. So when you do reflect back, you're going to think, I overcame this, this, and this, and this. It's a reminder that I am tough. I do hard things, and I do them well. I will get through it. We will get through it. Sometimes that's our greatest need. There's a biblical passage that says, count it all joy when you go through various trials, when you go through sufferings. Like, why would you count it joyful? It didn't say count it happy. It says count it joy, because long term, I'm going to end up stronger as long as I don't quit. What happens too often is this mindset that it's not happening fast enough. So we quit only to have to start over and still wait the same amount of time again, which slowed the whole process down to get what we needed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Simple.
Yeah. No, while you were doing this, one of the things that really helped, and for the listeners, literally when my wife and I started our firm, I think one of the first people I met with and sat down with was you.
Yeah.
And, I think back on it now because we've crossed over some pretty crazy milestones. So we're closing in now on $1 billion under management. The equity portfolios that I manage personally are around 600 million.
Yep.
I think when I first came in, when we first met, when I was telling you we were starting the firm, I think we had like 12 million.
Yep.
Assets under management total or something like that. That was like 10 years ago. Yep. Right. And so when people hear those numbers, they think exactly what I would have thought 10 or 15 years ago, which is nonsense. Guy's blowing his own smoke. Yeah. He inherited a bunch of that from his dad. Yeah. He had a rich family friend, right? Nobody can bring in that much money over that period of time. And I would have thought the exact same thing.
I agree.
I think back on that, a couple of things in line of what you said. We never talked about numbers. We never talked about $1 billion. We never talked about 500 million. And one of the benefits to not talking about it is looking back on that. I never would have believed this was possible. And that stated goal would have been a limiting factor.
Yes.
Right?
That's true.
I would have undershot so much, but I couldn't dream that big at this point. Yeah. What is the importance of, and we set goals at our company like that. And you were talking about Frosty. I don't know if you can see the Frosty bobblehead on the shelf right behind me. Yeah. We set goals like that. And I know that it drove a couple of my early employees nuts because they'd go, well, what are our numbers this year? And I go, we don't set goals that way. Yeah. It's not a goal to me unless I don't have total control on attaining it or completing it by an end of some period of time, right? Whether it's today or it's this week. And so I want you to talk about the importance of goals, differentiating those between dreams, right? Yes. And then the other thing that was so impactful that mattered to me was the humility necessary, right? Like meaning when you really, and I remember you encouraging me about this, when you really want to be successful, you quit having to be the author of that book. Right. And you pick up the best one that's ever been written and you just stinking copy it.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and you really helped reiterate those things to me. And I inserted those big time in everything that I do. Yeah. And it helped me infinitely. But explain what that is, what both of those things are and why they work. Why is it so helpful?
Yeah. One of the things that which was so critical, especially when you first started your business and when you came to me, and I was thinking about you and your wife and how important that was, and you guys working together through the process. And when I say together, I mean, people don't understand how significant that is. I mean, and follow this here. The reason early on, the goal wasn't a number. The reason early on, the goal was growth, which would then grow your belief in terms of what was possible. I think some people pick numbers and certain things too soon or too early. And many times they set goals based on what they believe their potential is, but they have a bad understanding of what their potential actually is. They don't know how many blind spots, how many self-imposed limitations they already have built up in their mind. They don't understand how much their surrounding environment has a huge influence on what their expectations are. So some of those early on, what we got to do is, it's not what we got to learn. Man, Zach, I'm going to tell you real talk, brother, it's what we got to unlearn.
Yeah.
And so when you're talking, it's like and I think it works so well because similar journey, right? Like it's easy for me today. I'm very sensitive to articulating out loud sometimes what my numbers are, my clients, the individuals who I'm working with. If you would have told me years ago that, these are all people that we read about and see, and they're all on my, I got cell phone numbers and we text each other back and forth and I'm giving those kind of insights. Man, I was begging anybody in the area to even give me 5 minutes to tell their organization about something. I mean, if it wasn't for Charlie Davis DeWitt even give me a chance, that it wouldn't happen. Now, follow this here. When it comes to goal setting, our goal is to live a life of goals that progresses us forward. But those goals don't always, I don't care what people write about SMART goals and all that kind of stuff. There are certain goals that become debilitating if you try to go after them too early. It's not the time, because there are certain goals that I am not able to deal with the inevitable ebbs and flows that go along with it. So if I would have said right here, because there was a time, and I don't want people to lose this, there was a time, Zach, you and I had to sit down together. And now that we can actually talk numbers, there was a time 500 million seemed like a big number. But here's what was different about you at that time. We weren't talking about how to get the 500 million. We were spending time getting you to think from 500 million. Like, who do I need to be as a leader and an individual that will attract, that will draw, more important, that I'm capable of being a good steward, not only over that, but still as a husband, still as a father, still with a level of humility. So then now we're at $1 billion. Well, we didn't start thinking about $1 billion once we're at $1 billion, but it's not about getting to the number. That's inevitable. Why is that inevitable? I tell any leader who's listening to me right now, if you are good at what you do, it naturally draws results. You're going to be compensated for being good at what you do. But to keep getting better at what you do is what's critical. And the way to keep getting better at what you do many times changes. So my ability to be a good speaker, inspiring keynote speaker, man, that was in there. There's a natural personality, energy, passion. My mind moves a certain way, great. But being an effective strategist, being able to coach people who have to coach others, being able to sit back and figure out ways to get out of the way so others could shine, brother, those were stretches for me. Like, those were real difficult things for me, right? Like, and when you talk about the humility factor, humility is also an agricultural term. Humility has to do with the culture, the humility, the humus, the culture of the soil. And a humble soil is a soil by which can grow. The reason why some goals and many people get limited is not because they don't have the humility to go further. And sometimes that's that. But many times they don't have the belief in the belief that they can go forward. So I reach a goal and it becomes the top. But if I can fall in love with the process, if my goal isn't just to reach that number, my goal is what happens to me when I pursue that number, then I don't lose all the changes that happen to me. And then when I get to the number, I'm like, if we go for a greater number, I have to grow even more. So I'm using the goal to grow. I'm not using people to gain the goal. It's a man, that matters a lot. Now, don't get me wrong. I work with some leaders. Man, it's all about the goal. It ain't about the people. The problem is I also still spend time with those leaders once they reach the goal and then use the goal to also grow their people. Now all they have left is some of the results of the goal, but they don't have the relationships. They don't have the connect. They don't have the things that they could have gotten so much more out of it if they would have done both, right? And one of the things that we talk about, at what point, there comes a point where you do use the numbers, and you do it. Why? Because you are mature enough and healthy enough to know what the number represents. Now that number just doesn't represent me. Like before, I want to hit this now. Full disclosure, to one day to finally have a net worth of 7 figures. Man, I didn't do it in football. I lost everything. I had to be a janitor in the middle of the night. I had to do all this stuff. When I started my business, man, when my daughter was first born, I'd say all the time, my daughter was on, I had her on layaway, bro. I was making payments to the hospital just only a few years before I could officially say Taylor was mine, right? I'm fun with it, right? Okay. But the reality is
the once a week payment plan.
Once a week, yeah, come on, do what you can. But the only thing that hit me was once I get to this number to be different, man, I was incongruent with the goal because I was thinking the goal because I was going to show people and I was going to prove that I'm not a failure to others. And I'm like, man, bro, that stuff don't carry any weight. Once you get, it's so hollow. It was not until I finally realized, brother, my goals can be very individual. I can paint a picture of where I want to go. But when things really started exploding, it was when those goals stopped being self-portraits. And when it started to include who else can go along with us, who else can make it happen. And brother, that's when all the changes happen.
It's funny you say that because I don't know that we ever talked about this part of it, but one of the changes I started making was I started basing my income goals off my employees. So like I would sit there and be like, my goal is to get this guy to 200 grand or 250 grand or whatever that number was per year. And part of the reason was it's fun.
Yep.
Right. It's fun to help other people succeed and see their family progress and see them accomplish things. Or one of them's goal, a couple of their goals were for their wives not to have to work.
Come on.
Several of them have accomplished that. Right.
Yep.
But what I started realizing is at a certain point, and you and I talked about this, and I've said it before, and I understand it sounds like first world problems, but I just desperately want people to understand this. At a very early point, and it was much sooner than I thought it was, the money quit mattering. It just did. Right? And then you realize, honestly, if I make this number or 5 times it, my life doesn't change.
Lifestyle doesn't change.
No, nothing changes.
Yep.
My kids don't listen to me better. My teenage daughter doesn't recoil sometimes when I try to hug her, right? No, but you know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't change. But what is fun is when you invest in other people and you watch them change. That's something that can keep you up and keep you grinding because, the other thing is I think there's very few people that are actually motivated by money. It's not many, are there? I mean, you probably know some, right?
I will tell you, there are those who were motivated maybe by money early. I will tell you, there are those who are motivated not by money, but by keeping score. So I've said many times, that's why there are there are certain guys, even leaders I work in business, like who, just their own worth. I mean, they're still working and grinding. And brother, they're worth, 10, 11 figures, bro. Like, it's, and you're like, why do they still do that? It's because they're competitive like that. That's part of what keeps them going. It's the reason, I found a few years ago that Larry Brown, who was the coach at Kansas years ago, and NBA championship coach, and all these kind of stuff. Come to find out he's coaching a high school team, right? He can't help it. Right.
Yeah.
It's what he does. And so you're going to run into those who, that's kind of how they measure business. But I will tell you, a big driver, and it's important for people to spend some time imagining before they reach the goal. It's not a game. I say this to leaders, I say this to groups, and people look at me like, oh, here we go. It's real though, right? Envisioning, visualizing, imagining yourself that you're already at the goal you're going after, and just put yourself there. Whatever that number is, whatever that goal is, imagine it's already happening. I first heard this not during my playing days, but what was the differentiator between all these talented players and the best players? It was like the best players, the game slowed down. I remember asking Reggie White that. I remember talking to Brett Favre years ago when he was there. I remember I've had great coaches. Andy Reid was my coach in Green Bay, bro. Like Andy Reid was my tight end coach. John Gruden was our wide receiver coach. Mike Holmgren was our head coach. I mean, bro, we were surrounded with. But if you talk to Andy and you talk to all of them, man, they would actually have us imagine, run the play, run the series, work backwards, talk to us as if it's already happened. Pete Carroll was my coach with the Jets. And so I stayed close to Pete when he was with the Seahawks. I'm still connected to Pete now that he was the Raiders. One of the greatest statements ever, if there are any Seahawk fans who are listening to this right now, one of the greatest moments I've ever heard in coaching experience, and it's been supported by some of the great Seahawks who've been on the team. I've had it. They've told me directly. In the year that they won the Super Bowl, Pete Carroll says to the team, they're going to kick it off. They're going to kick it to Percy. Percy's going to run it back and score. Then after Percy scores, this is what we're going to do. He said it so matter-of-factly and then it goes out and happens. After it happened, that team had no shot to beat the Seahawks. Like the belief level, the confidence level. Right. Now, don't get me wrong. Everybody is talented on every single team. But the belief he took the team to, because he didn't have them think about scoring. He had them thinking as if they had already scored. So we're going to celebrate, but let me tell you what we're going to do right after that. I say this to leaders all the time. Spend more time as if you've already reached your goal. How are you going to behave when you reach that number as a husband, as a mother, as a wife, as a friend, as a parent, with your friend? Spend time as if you're already there. So when you get there, the world, everything slows down. It doesn't speed up. Because if you get there before you were prepared to be there, keeping it is the problem. Reaching a goal ain't the problem. We can find all kinds of reaches, but to maintain it and keep going, I need the world to slow down. But in most people, everything speeds up. That's why you see that's why there's so few super talented rookie quarterbacks. They can throw the ball 80 yards. The game moves too fast, so they can't adjust. What we're doing for ourselves is spending time as if you were already there. Here's what I learned, and you said it already. Because I spent time already imagining that I was already at a place where I got enough generational wealth, and I'm thinking about my children and my children's children. And man, I had to start thinking like that when I was still trying to beg anybody to even listen to me, right? It was sometimes, and they were like, man, you spend too much time daydreaming. No, I'm spending time creating resiliency, because if I don't spend time imagining this, then what I'm going through right now doesn't feel worth it. Like I have to have something bigger than myself. But here's what I discovered while doing it. The same things that my wife was into before we made money hasn't changed. She will still leave Safeway, go to Walmart. Why? Because Safeway raised prices on those beans by 37 cents. So she's going to go, right? There are certain things people understand. Your fundamental lifestyle doesn't change as much as people assume that it does. It doesn't. And so once you get there, what's driving you now? It has to be beyond just the money or whatever. Here's the one thing that has afforded you. Here's the one thing that I'm very grateful that has afforded me. Because of sometimes the external success and what's happening, more people are willing to listen because there's built-in credibility, only to be told the very same thing that people right around them can tell too. It's discipline. There's no secrets. There's no magic in this. There's no secret thing. It's actually the basic fundamentals work even better. I was expecting here just tremendous, like, secret answers and everything. None of that happened, man. It was the same basics that we heard before.
And it always is. It always is.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate, and actual performance may differ.
And this is a perfect transition into the next thing, because you had a very simple way, and I've deployed this with my wife. I've deployed it with my children. I've deployed it with my football team, because it is such an easy way to begin to develop discipline and consistency. And discipline's a whole nother one of those topics, because discipline is like, it reminds me a lot of like what we do with God, right? Like,
yeah.
we run away from him constantly, all the while knowing that toward him is where all good things come from. What am I doing? Why do I continue? Oh, this body of death, right? Like a dog returns to his vomit, right? It's the same kind of thing. And we shun discipline the same way.
Yeah.
And yet, again, it is its own gift,
Yes.
right? The peace, the serenity, the way you feel gathered, the way you feel focused,
Come on, man.
the way you feel not behind the eight ball,
Come on.
right? And how you get there is so much different than what the perception was. Even a guy like me, at this point, I had played college football, albeit Division III, but on paper, I'd already accomplished things that supposedly required high levels of discipline.
That's right.
But I didn't know how to transition that. I knew how to apply it in the weight room, on the football field, but how do I apply it in life? And you brought up the concept to me of one thing, right? And that is another thing. I feel like I keep saying that one changed my life. They all did, but this one was really important, because this was a credibility builder to myself, and actually helped me change my own perception of myself, because I was incapable of being disciplined because I didn't believe I could be.
Yes.
And I wouldn't accept the fact that I was. And then one of the things I found out on that journey was I was already pretty disciplined, right? Like I was beating myself up for things that weren't even the case, but it took me to marry myself to the process of this one thing to sort of uncover that, right?
Yeah.
So walk me through A, what that is, but B, why is it so powerful?
Well, first and foremost is the credibility. Even when people talk about how important, honesty is, right? And it is. Now, there's a nuance and subtlety I'm about to say here, and I hope people will grasp it. You were actually being dishonest with yourself when you were saying you weren't disciplined. And we overgeneralize everything. So if I've lacked discipline in this area because I feel bad about it, or because I haven't stuck with it, I allow that to be the description of me everywhere, when it's not, right? Like, bro, like we lost a game, so we must suck. No, bro, you messed up on 2 specific plays. Identify those 2 plays. You fix those 2 plays. We're actually pretty good. Like, review the film, man. And so it is our nature to over-exaggerate, right? Both sides. Over-exaggerate when we win and completely over-exaggerate when we lose. And so what we have to do, and there's a discipline to it. That's why we pick the one thing. That's why we don't pick a whole bunch. The bottom line is I've never done a bunch of things well, right? It's what's the one area, the one thing that if I can just lock onto and then stick to it, measure my progress. And people are like, well, why is it so important to pick one thing? Is it because that one thing's important? And it's like, the process of discipline is what's important. That's the win. Whatever I get better at is a secondary benefit, than me just having the experience of establishing discipline. Now, follow this here. It's sometimes very important for people to hear how discipline is broken down. The word discipline, okay, which it means to disciple, but the word discipline is another word for like people's like, I need more self-discipline. Basically, what you're saying is you need more self-control. That's what you're saying. I want to have more self-control. But the key to self-control is attention control. A-T-T, attention. Why? Because usually what breaks my discipline is my attention span. Okay? I get distracted. People are like, oh, I got to be more disciplined with food. Then why stay in an environment where all that's around you? Right? Like, yeah, bruh, like you're trying to have, that's crazy. None of us, it's an attention control issue. So how do I help myself with the right attention? So if I don't have a bunch of things I'm just trying to get better at this one thing, right? And so if I can learn, which only comes from training, I have to train that discipline. I got to train attention control. So there's a reason why if I want to get there's a reason we would get up every Thursday morning at 5:30 and meet. Why? It wasn't just what we were getting from the experience. It was the process of making myself get up. Now, why did I do it? Not because I wanted to many times. It's because I knew you guys were showing up. Do you see how we do these things on purpose? And so the benefit of it, then the reason I would follow through on some of the things we talked about there is I know in my soul I paid a price to get to that meeting. So I'm going to get something out of it. So my father used to say all the time, he says, son, if something creates a little pain for you and it was pain for you to do it, guess what? You're going to value it even more because it cost you something. Mm-hmm. So I realized the benefit of attention control, the benefit of that kind of self-control, which is self-discipline. What it's teaching me is to pay a price even when there's delayed gratification. If I can learn how to delay gratification in any area of my life, I become that much better. It doesn't mean that gratification won't eventually show up. It just means I will do certain things without the evidence of that thing showing up first. Brother, that already separates me from the most people. And in the day and age that we live in today, especially with social media, where we give the impression that everything can happen immediately, we already differentiate ourselves. And it's not even about competition. I'm talking about internally. And so one of the things we were talking about the one thing, that's why it's so important. Just picking the one thing is a discipline process. It teaches me how to prioritize because I just got through saying everything can't matter the same. What's the one thing I want to get a little bit better at? And when it comes to my wife and I, what was the one thing I wanted to get better at more than anything? Not this big, bruh. I got too many areas to try to improve on. I tell people all the time, like anytime my wife says to me, like, hey, honey, we need to talk. You know, I promise you I'm not sitting there thinking, oh, my God, more compliments. Right?
Yeah. No.
I mean, so if you want to talk about what's my list, I got a list. But for me,
I mean, it might be just because we're both married to black women. My suspicion is that's not the case. My suspicion is that's not the case.
It's so funny. Something happened, Zach, which is so funny. I had to pick one area. And for me, what was the one area? Well, I wanted to discipline myself to spend more time with my wife, listening with my eyes, not just with my ears. So look at it. Now, somebody else may not think it's a big deal, but put the phone down and look at it. Now, am I great at it? Absolutely not. But it's a discipline if I can remember and challenge it. Did I do better this week at just giving my wife my eyes? There's a bunch of other areas I may not have been good at this week, but here's the reality. I can't handle all of those. I get overwhelmed. There's too many. But I can make progress there. And because I made progress there, what I discovered is when I'm listening with my eyes, my wife knows I'm paying attention, which is a win. I usually get greater information, which is a win. She feels more connected, which is a win. I'm not blinded by there's so many benefits, but the most important thing is if I can do that and I get it down. Now, what's the next one thing in this area? And what people don't understand, they play down how powerful. Now, we shouldn't, and this is a personal transition to the things you do for all of us, being a client of yours, which I appreciate, okay, is this. We just don't value the compound effect of doing the right things over and over and over again. People, there is a benefit to discipline, which is a reward in itself. But when it does show up, the reward of compound interest, the reward of the compound effect doing the right thing over and over again, and it was usually something small, and I can keep doing it, but because I've done it so many times, a big result comes from it. Bro, it's a game changer. This is why anybody who tells me, that there's certain things they do from a discipline standpoint consistently, I'm like, okay, that's somebody who's on page. That's somebody who's on path. Now, it's also important about this one thing is you don't choose every area, Zach. That's what kind of gave us confidence. We weren't picking every area of our lives to become more disciplined in. We will pick another area. Now, I'm a big believer in this. Every time I hit a new level of discipline, it's kind of like the tide rising. All boats come up a little bit more, right? There's no way it's going to stay just to this area, right? I know there's probably some wives or some women out there thinking, no, I think it can be completely compartmentalized. My husband could use a lot of help over here, right?
Yeah.
But, from a general standpoint, the confidence we get by picking one thing, it creates focus in us. It gives us something to see how we're processing against. It gives us a chance to keep moving. Do you know the only reason, I hate to say the only reason, that's a pretty strong statement. A very high, there's a high probability that most people, when it comes to reaching their goals, the only thing that causes them not to reach it is broken focus. Brother, it is rarely they ran into a competency problem. It is rarely they tried too hard and just ended up quitting. What usually happens is they started going after it with good energy, with good progress. And then a few weeks go by, a month go by, a couple months go by. And all of a sudden, they're not doing the same things they were doing when they first initially were going after the goal. Something happened in your commitment towards that goal. That's why when I see people make major goals happen and super things happen, and you can determine as successful. The reason I am naturally a celebrant, I celebrate people's success. I celebrate people who accomplish things. Why? Because I know instantly they had to do something that had to be repeated over and over and over again to end up with that result. I know kids who love Steph Curry like crazy. But then when I get to hear his teammates talk about practices and shoot around, when he wouldn't leave until he had 600 makes. This is the greatest shooter ever said, yet he loves the process more than the fame. 600 makes? We used to love Kobe Bryant because Kobe Bryant would say all the time, he goes, my commitment was, I'm going to keep doing it until I get it right. And then I'm going to do it right so much until I can no longer get it wrong. Man, he already was worth $500 million. He already had, yet why was he growing? That's the part that I wish more and more people would celebrate. But that's your answer. If you ever want to sit back and Zach go, what's one of the reasons I've been successful? And don't get me wrong, success is relative. I tell people all the time, look, there's so many different levels way beyond me, right? But I can say I am proud of the places and the things I've been able to do simply because that means I stuck to it. And I will tell you right now, you do not ever, I tell people who are successful, don't apologize for being successful. Be incredibly grateful and then figure out how can you share the roots of your success, not just the fruits of your success. Everybody wants the fruits of your success. No, man, we want to give them the roots of our success. So that allows them to be able to do the same. That's what's so rewarding.
I thought of a funny deal. So I was at a golf tournament this last weekend, and one of the guys there was Greg Lewis. Remember the running back for the Huskies back in the day? Greg Lewis?
That's my guy.
Yeah, okay, you know him, yeah.
Yeah.
So he was telling us a hilarious Walter Payton story. So when he won the Doak Walker Award at the University of Washington, Walter Payton comes the award, right, and gives him the award, and he goes, and he's telling him, look, I think that you can be a great NFL running back if you will commit yourself to the process and really work hard. And if you'd like to, I'll send you my off-season training program. And he's like, send it to me. Yes, I want to be great. And he goes, I get that training program. He's like, the thing's like this thick. I read through it and I'm like, I'm fine being good. Right? I'm fine being good.
That's awesome.
I thought that was so fun. But it was such a practical thing because you're looking at him going, you hear this guy won the Doak Walker Award, right? Best running back in the country. And yet the separation, even at that level,
Bro.
right? To us, the human eye, the separation's that small, but it really wasn't. The separation was about 2 inches, right? But those 2 inches really mattered. And I just thought that was hilarious. He had us just rolling on the tee box. But to insert my own experience with this, the other thing it did is it created what I kind of refer to as like a waterfall of success, right? Like, because my one thing, I remember when we planned it out, for anybody that doesn't really know what we're talking, I think it's really clear. But the one thing is saying, picking out that one primary thing that you can control, meaning that not, if you're a stock trader, not making 10% on a trade per week, something you can control, right? You have 100% control over, and just focusing on that one thing, right? And for me, the one thing was devotions every single day at 5:30 a.m., right? And I'm an ex-athlete, wanted to be in shape, wanted to working out and all that kind of stuff. And you and I were, I remember you saying just the one thing, just focus on the one thing. So I did what I normally do. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to focus on that one thing then. And if it's just one thing, I really have to get it nailed.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
So I started going to bed earlier, right? To ensure that I could do that one thing. Right. As I went to bed earlier, I felt better, and I'd be done with my devotions around 6:20, 6:30 in the morning. Nobody's awake in the house. Might as well go work out, right? So you fast forward to today, not only is my business grown, but I'm back under 200 pounds, wearing a 31-inch waist, and I hadn't done that since I was 18. And it just, everything kept just cascading. My golf game even got better. You know what I mean? What you start doing is you start realizing, and you're getting this feedback all the time, that effort is what I'm after, right? And I can control it, and I can win that game every single day.
Every day, bro. When you just said it, and again, we talked about the compound effect. Look how it led into everything else, because you kept winning in that one thing. I would also tell you, and you just hit it, and you articulate it so well with your example. When you choose one thing and you stick to it, like, trust that one thing will have an impact on everything else. And it's not, we're not tricking ourselves, but we're training ourselves. Like I say often, people think this is a trying issue. No, it's a training issue. Like, and if you pick the one thing and I was really going, and then I stopped doing it. I've had somebody come to me and they go, man, I started, but then I stopped. What do I do? It's not that
start again.
There we go. We're just really good at restarting. Like, restart. You're going to do it anyways. You're going to have to do it anyway. So we might as well start again. And one of the things I just really challenge your listeners who are listening, you can coach yourself forward, but don't confuse coaching with screaming, yelling. But no, it's like, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to stop. But then when you start again, just say, you know what? Next time I'm going to do it better. Next time I'm going to do different. Let me start again. Let me get going. There is absolutely no reason to beat yourself up or play the blame game. We get it. We know who's responsible. Our goal is responsibility, not blame. I work with enough organizations, enough leaders. It's amazing an organization to have a problem, or a group of leaders I work with who I have a problem, and immediately they're trying to search for who's at fault and what's up. And it's kind of our DNA, right? Like, whose fault is this? Who's the reason I quit? Or what's the reason I quit? I would have did it if it wasn't it. And you said a point that we can't miss. We're always identifying the one thing that we have 100% control over. We can't choose, the one thing that requires a whole lot of other people to have happen, right? Because then you're not in control. You can place blame. But when I was talking to these leaders, I said, listen, let's get it out of the way right from the beginning. If we're actually going to fix this problem, we're going to fix it. But the first thing is we got to make sure is this. Let me say up front, this is nobody's fault. You feel better. Okay? Nobody's to blame. It's not your fault. It's still your problem.
Right.
The problem haven't left. So let's spend no time trying to find fault or blame and immediately get into, how do we solve this problem? What's the one thing that we can all align on? And it's worth the conversation, right, that we can begin doing that solves this problem. And the key is, when you get this problem solved, you're going to be amazed on the confidence and the impact doing that one problem solves others. Zach, never forget, they're almost in every game, it's usually one play. And it's the play you didn't anticipate that creates the momentum that takes care of everything else. That's exactly what this one thing concept is coming from. Because if I can do that right and do that one thing, the compound effect. Another, really, what they say is the rule of one is like a 1 or 2% improvement, just a little bit improvement. And then the compound effect of that going over and over again, that leads to some of, that stuff better than me. That's why I give you guys the resources to take care of. But that's the mindset. That's the principle.
Yeah, we had another way that I use that is when we first started, before we started doing the podcast or radio or anything like that, we were buying leads. Actually, even when we first started doing the podcast and the radio, we would buy leads to kind of fill in the gaps, right? Make up for the shortfall.
Yeah.
And we'd get them from an internet source that is really well known in the industry. If anybody's been a financial advisor and tried to buy leads, I'm sure they've all bought from us. It's called Financialize or something like that. And my goal with the leads, knowing what we'd already done, my goal with the leads was not a dollar goal or a production goal. It was all about the speed at which we contacted and how long we could keep them on the phone. Right out of the gate.
Yeah.
And we made a game out of it. And in a single year, we brought in about 22 million in assets off those leads. And when I'd go to other places, I'd get asked to go talk at some of these conferences. And I didn't understand this at that time because this had been my only, it had been the only time I'd bought leads. I'd never done it before. Yeah. And so there was this perception in the industry where everybody laughed at these online leads and was like, oh, let me guess, you did it with online leads. And I'd be like, how'd you know? And they're like, get out of here. How'd you really do it? And I'm like, it was like this thing that I wasn't aware of. There was this belief. And then the group that I was working with actually realized that, oh my gosh, that's where he's getting. They're like, how'd you do it? And I went, I don't really understand why everybody's freaking out about this, right? It's the only thing I'd ever done. And I explained to them, well, we quit focusing on whether it was a good lead or whether it was a bad lead or whatever. And we focused on how quick can we call them, right, from getting the lead, regardless of when they said they wanted to be called, right? Because my attitude was, well, you submitted the lead right now, so you're thinking about it right now. I'm going to give you a call right now, right? And then how long can we keep them on the phone, right? And it worked. It worked really well. Now, there was some excesses with this. Like my kids still remember a 4th of July where we're driving to the lake to go to this party, right? I pulled off the side of the road because a lead came through on the 4th of July. The interchange of Highway 16 and I-5? Yeah. Well, right after you get off 16, right as you're going to the Tacoma Dome, I'm off on the side of the road on the shoulder doing a sales call on the 4th of July, right? But it was this like childlike exuberance to adhere to the process because you just knew What are you planting? I don't know, man, but it's going to grow big. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because the confidence is so instilled. If I do this and focus on the grind, I know what's coming out the other side. I don't even need to look. I just got to keep turning this crank, baby. Right? And we get so focused on what is the outcome? Am I getting the desired outcomes? Am I getting as much as I should, rather than just turning the crank another few more times, right?
God, Zach, there's so much in what you're saying, man. In terms of even performance alone, man, I mean, all of a sudden, it's the field goal kicker who's not even thinking about the make. He's just so in love with the process that the process almost causes him to forget whether it's the end of the game to a win or begin. The fact that you shifted it from how quickly and made a game out of it. How quickly can we get right to somebody when a lead comes in? And how long can we keep them on the phone? All the other outcomes become irrelevant. That's what I'm looking at. And then you lose yourself in just the habit of doing it. And the benefits that come from it, because you're not outcome. Did it work? Or no, we're measuring how many. If there's a parent out there right now, or a coach of someone, the number of things that you can do that is completely in alignment with what you just got through articulating, Zach. I used to coach my daughter's basketball teams, and I had one rule. I changed up the stat book. All I cared about, and it was so fun, for certain girls who were too timid to shoot or want to shoot, whatever, I only measured them on FGAs, not makes, just attempts. Man, we used to go crazy, and people couldn't understand why we would be celebrating at the end of the quarter, or why. Man, we have 2 points on the scoreboard, right? And they're like, "Why are the kids seem to have so fun?" Because they didn't realize on my own scorecard, man, we scored 22 points. Why? Because we had 11 field goal attempts. Man, 11 field goal attempts with girls who were in 4th grade, like just to even throw the ball at the basket, right? But what happened? That 2 points, man, I think at the end of the season, we had a game where he scored 32 points. And now if you told me the focus was on them making shots, no, man, the focus was on taking shots. If I get you enough confidence to take shots, now we can become working on, little forms. But I got to get you excited about just the effort in the first place. Zach, that's what you did with your, well, that is, but here's what's cool.
Hey, to be fair, I had good coaching. These weren't my ideas.
No. I'm going to tell you one thing that's great about it too. It's not being naive, but because that's what you had to work with, you weren't finding reasons why it couldn't work. You were finding reasons why it can. Mm-hmm. And dude, there's so much to this, man. Like when we talk about, I am still fascinated by the number of leaders I work with or people who are successful in certain areas who are ridiculously curious. They just love hearing what people are doing and how they're doing, even the most, really, I mean, I'm talking about people who are ridiculously successful, but fascinated on new ways to get, I got to try that. There's just something beautiful about learners, man. There's just something beautiful because learners are earners, and it's just how it works. There's just something beautiful about that, brother. Man, it's been awesome, man. You got me.
Well, and you got me. Well, and you got it. It's so funny because you helped me see so many of these things. Even that, like what you said, the learners are earners. One of the ways that I started getting good at this is I went and talked to the guys that were the best at it, the best at rounding up assets. And this, I remember you advising me to go do this. And asked them how they did it, and then I just copied it. You know what I mean?
Okay. Don't leave that. I can't let you just say that. I got to emphasize to folks who are listening. It is crazy how simple what you just described is, yet how hard it is for some people to do. I was doing something with 3M. I had Georgia Pacific as well. I had some probably 300 of their number ones or their top salespeople in the company all together. And I asked a simple question. How many of you are readers? Everybody raises their hand. They're reading different stuff of sales, right? I said, but how many of you are aware of who your top 10 salespeople in the whole organization are? Almost every hand went up. So that's 300 folks raised their hand. I said, not only do you know who those top 10 are, at least you're aware of who they are. My next question was, how many of you have had lunch with them? How many of you sat down with them? How many of you virtually called them or out of 300 hands that went, they probably got down to about 20, 25. And I sat there and went, at least you all know where your next top 10 are going to come from. They never, look, I sat there. I actually had a couple of their top performers, and I kind of teed it up this way. I was like, how open, how willing? He goes, man, I love telling people what I do and how it was done. And I said, what's the number one thing you tell them? If I had to do it again, this is the things I would skip. This is how I collapse time. Right? Somebody has already paid the freaking tuition. Somebody's already, they're right there for you. But because you feel uncomfortable, a little nervous, scared, whatever the case may be, instead of calling them, you did like I did when I was playing in the NFL. I hung out with guys who also weren't that good and weren't getting playing time. That was my group. So we were spending all our time on the sideline talking to each other about, why we weren't playing, and the coach didn't know any better. You would have thought I would have spent more time with the guys who were actually playing. Like, you would think I was sat right next to them with a pen, taking every note, asking every question. No, I wouldn't ask them questions. I was having commentary with other people who were not playing, right? Like, it's so backwards on our thinking. So when you said, hey, Eric, we talked about it, I found who's doing it, who's successful, and I called them. I'm coming to see you. I want to know what you do. I want to know how you do it. Brother, it's the greatest compliment. There's one particular young lady. I met her. Her name is Ryan, but she works for Stanford University. Literally, she's brilliant. She's 29 years old, brilliant, right? I did something for Stanford's leadership, everything. She comes up to me, and not only does she ask me some great questions, but then she says, would it be okay if I call you? I get that 1,000 times from everywhere. Mm-hmm. Not only did she call me, she called me with a list of questions. Then she jumped on the phone, and then she asked me again. And yes, I'm busy. Yes, I got a lot of things going. But you know what I did next? I was like, Ryan, I'm telling you right now, I'm coaching you. I'm making sure, Christy Gunn, we're going to make it happen. I don't care where I'm at in the world. I got you. And that's what happened. And people don't understand. You know how valuable it is to actually hear from somebody who wants your wisdom, who asks for it. I always tell them when it comes to helping folks or whatever, proof of somebody's willingness to grow or real growth is their willingness to pursue. If they're not willing to pursue it, that gives you indication they're not serious about it. They get excited about the thought of it. But the real things that required to do it, that's why, Zach, I can tell you now, but some of the things we talked about early, I said it at the beginning. It's not that we were just getting up at 5:30. It's not that. But brother, you would say what you were going to do. You would then turn around and do it. And then you would come back. And then every time we reviewed film, we weren't reviewing your intentions. We were reviewing things you actually did that now you can course correct. That's what happens. Some people love meeting with somebody, but they come back and they haven't really took action. We're just having philosophical conversations. Nothing changes until something moves. So this whole one thing philosophy, like pick one thing and begin working on that one thing, it's because there's nothing like activity by which we can course correct and learn from. It's hard to learn just talking about playing a game. At some point, you're going to have to fill a hole. At some point, you was going to have to read a guard actually on the field. It couldn't just be drills. At some point, I'm going to have to learn to get lower, right? I mean, it comes along with it, man. So anyhow, bro, I can't tell you.
What is that thing? One last thing, because I know we both have to go, but what is that? Because I suffered from that for a long time, actually, until what we've been describing, about 10 years ago. What is that thing where I have no proof of my own, that my way works, and yet I'm unwilling to yield to somebody else's way that clearly does, right? I remember my moment came from talking to you, but it also came from a family member of mine that was an insurance salesman, right? Mm-hmm. And he didn't go to college like I did. He didn't have a finance degree. He wasn't as smart as I was, but man, he was taking care of his family a heck of a lot better than I was mine. And I finally, and he was one of those first guys where I sat there and went, How are you doing what you're doing? And all I know is you're feeding your family better than I'm feeding mine. And so I'm ready to listen. I'm ready to learn, right? What is that thing that keeps us clinging to this unproven way of, actually, I did have a proven way. My way consistently produced underwhelming results that left me feeling like a bum, right?
Man.
Why was I holding on to that though and not letting go, right? Why was I sticking to that?
One of the best lines I ever heard from a mentor of mine who helped me understand just how this mind of ours works. He said it this way: people are far more rationalizing than they are rational. We gather information to prove why we're not absurd or we're not the ones crazy. So that means I find as many other people to justify right where I'm at, because in order to change, I have to admit that I need to. In order to change, I got to admit that what I'm doing ain't working. And what's crazy is I can know it's not working and still not really want to own it, because if I have to own it, that means I am now responsible to do something about it. Brother, it is psychological. And usually there has to be a catalyst. There's a moment that triggers you into saying enough is enough. And there's two things that can drive it. I used to believe what drives it is my desire for a greater outcome. Like, ooh, this is really driving. And then I realized something. It wasn't. If it wasn't, for me, it was disgust. At some point, I had to get disgusted with myself. At the one point when my wife looks at me and sees me on being so passive because something didn't go right in business or something right, and she was like, I don't even recognize you. Like, I don't even recognize this guy. And the only way I can describe it, and I don't care if it was pride, ego, whatever the case may be, I sat there and I was like, I will never have my wife look at me like that again. I will, it looked like she lacked confidence in my ability to do the one thing that I got to do for my family, which is take care of them and provide for them. You know, I mean, don't get me wrong. And my wife, if she got to do it herself, she would have. Oh my God, just even saying it out loud. I have no other way. And I tell people this all the time. I ain't telling anybody else how to be motivated. I am just telling you what changed me. That day, she looked at me sitting on that and said to me, looked me in my eye sockets and said, I don't recognize you. That's not who I married. And I went, oh no, it got at me out of my pity party. It got me. There's a lot of things I don't always do right. But one thing ain't going to happen is my wife being fearful of whether or not she's covered or not. Whether or not that can't happen. And so for me, that was the driver. Later on, with the goals and the possibilities, that was great. But the game-changing moment was I was disgusted with me. And I'm not talking about not disgust where I'm getting to self-pity. I mean, I was even disgusted if falling into a pity party in the first place. Like that's what I was disgusted with. You know, where I was like, bro, what? This can't be. And so when you ask, what is that thing? I believe this. Now but I really believe this strongly. There's too many times, even as parents. Now, it's a little different challenge for me. It's going to be a little different challenge for you. I didn't think it was the same challenge for our parents, because our parents didn't spend the time trying to keep us from all problems and challenges like it kind of is today. But there has to be room sometimes where you feel the full weight of your bad decisions, the full weight of your passivity, the full weight. Sometimes you can't save people from that, because if you save people from that, there's not a whole lot of catalyst for change. Like if you remove the very thing that really creates greater, if I don't experience the actual cost of an action or the cost of a bad decision, the likelihood that I'm going to do it again is extremely high. I have never seen the development of character by a good talking to. I just haven't seen it. Like, not saying it can't happen. Especially, I ain't seen it with young men right now.
Yeah, now, certainly not.
My daughters is a little different. Like they kind of, you know, they listen. but I ain't never seen. You know, but I gotta say it out of my heart. I ain't never seen.
Well, no, and you and I have very similar stories. It's one of the things that drove me there was a foreclosure notice on the front door.
Come on, bro.
And my wife looking at me like, "You gonna do something about this?" You know, and sitting there envisioning. I still remember the day, man. I broke down in my office and cried my eyes out because I'm sitting there going, "I'm gonna sit here because I've been too prideful. I'm going to sit here and watch my wife and my children get pulled out of the only home they ever known.
Come on, bro.
Because I'm too prideful to do it somebody else's way."
Yep.
And that was, you know, they say that nowadays was like, that was when I was radicalized.
Yeah.
Right? Like that was the moment for me. That was the moment for me.
Look, man.
Disgust.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of, you know, positive attitude and all the things that are inspiring. And yeah, but as my father, like I said earlier, my father would say to me, he said, "Son, don't waste pain. Pain's a great, don't waste it." And I promise you, that day I was like, okay, there's a lot of pain I go through, but the look on my wife's face, bro, that just, I couldn't, man. I already, whew.
No, because you knew at that moment, right? It's a Rubicon moment. You know that if I fold here, I ain't coming back from it.
I ain't coming back.
You know what I mean?
Bruh, I ain't coming back. That's why it's so funny. There's even certain movies, I told somebody once, there's even certain movies where there's been a character, an actor who had to play the part of a person who folded, right? And I can't even look at the actor the same.
I know.
They played the part so well, but right, like I can't, I will never look at that. I remember when I watched the movie Troy and Orlando Bloom was the reason, like his brother gets killed because he won't fight. Brother, I don't care what movie you put Orlando Bloom in. Like it's hard for me to look at him any different. I don't care if you make him an elf. I don't care if you make it. I was like, yo, man, I can't roll with you.
It's so fun. You and I have never talked about this, man. I am the same way. Like I cannot unsee that. You know what I mean? It didn't help that he went on to date Katy Perry. That didn't really help his status, you know. But I was like, no, I can't unsee that.
I can't unsee it. And the reason I say that is because it touches the worst fear in me. Like he acted out and played that role, which is, bro, like. Man, I wasn't that far away from that. I was that close to being that, but it was my wife who was disappointed. I think in the movie, his father was like, "Get up and go fight him. Go fight him." And he still wouldn't. He wouldn't hug the feet of his brother until his brother goes and fights and has to die. Oh, my God.
I know.
Oh, bro. Cowardice, bro. And I've been that. It's my biggest fear.
We all have.
We all have. And
that's, in closing, I'll say this one thing too. And that's the other thing that you want people to, and I know I'm just recycling stuff I've heard you say when I say this, but the other thing is like, you got to get less sensitive about your failures in terms of just let them motivate you, but accept it. I remember when Greg in our group that met at 5:30 in the morning. Yeah. Remember that time he explained the way that the global positioning systems fly the airplanes?
Oh yeah.
How in our minds that we think we've got to make these big changes. Yeah. And then I got to get to that point in my life where I quit screwing up.
Yep.
And his whole point was, no. And you made this point. You go, get to the point in your life where you recognize the screw ups quicker and they're not as big a mistakes.
Oh, that's the answer.
Right? Because you're never going to quit screwing up.
No. It's just your course corrections are tighter. It's like when people say, "Man, I got to stop getting knocked down." No, just learn to get up faster. Right? Like that's it. Like you're recovering. And so when it comes to, even what we're doing with each other right now, what we've been able to do over the years and the people you put around you, the reason we got folks around us is because we do mess up. It's just our mess ups aren't as bad because we don't go so far off course. Our feedback is faster. It's quicker. It's not because we don't have the same opportunity, make the same mistake. We just have greater areas of boundaries and greater accountability that keep us like, right. If my success is dependent on just me, man, my whole family's in trouble. We all in trouble. But when I know I'm surrounded, I leave with this, man. The great thing is, you said self-help before, and it's good. And the key word is help. I say all the time, there's absolutely nothing wrong with needing help. There's only a problem with having help and not using it. And the reality is we are all surrounded by help. We just need to go ahead and ask for it and use the help that God's blessed us with.
Man, I can't thank you enough. I'm so glad we got to do this, and I got to share. We've been at this for a really long time, and the direction and advice that you've given me along the years, I know for a fact that you're one of those people that God put in my life to help me realize my own potential. And yeah, man, I can't tell you thank you enough. How can folks get a hold of you? Because we do have a lot of business owners that watch this, and I know there's a ton of people out there that could benefit from what you have to say. So how do people get a hold of you?
Well, the way you can get a hold of me is you can come to thegamechangersinc.com is our tagline, the Game Changer, or you can just go to ericboles.com, ERICBOLES.com. I have a great team, great folks who can make sure we get connected. For those, I'm also a big fan of, I do tons of executive coaching, but it's all connected through a corporate lens, right? Like so many of the work, those kind of relationships done corporately, all those kind of things. But the one thing that's important to recognize is any opportunity I can connect with somebody, especially a local, anything I can do. Man, full disclosure, it's one of my greatest joys. I've had enough people pour into me. And so I'm not giving back. I'm giving what I owe. And so I'm a big believer in that. The other way that you can get a hold of me, I'm on LinkedIn under Eric Boles. I'm on Twitter. I think I know my tagline, Eric Elbows, I believe it is. Yeah. Eric
that sounds right. That sounds right.
Yeah, I think Eric, I'm on Twitter. I'm also on, I think I just got on Instagram. I don't know if the tagline is still the same, but I think it is. Yeah, Eric Elbows. And all those different things, there's always 2 or 3 videos a week that are coming out just to encourage folks and that come on those things. The primary purpose of those things is, I've been so blessed for so long to get compensated very well of all the feedback and tools I get to use corporately and all that stuff. So these kind of things are allowed that many leaders out there, we don't need hour-long sessions. We just need some things that just keep reminding us of the direction we're going. And that's what those videos and those things offerings are for. So anyhow, man, appreciate that. That was one of my first. I'm not a great at promotion, so I'm learning.
There you go. There you go, man. Well, the proof's in the pudding. So hopefully people will tap into that. And thank you guys so much for listening to this. And I really hope that it helps folks out there, and share this with young people that are, that was the other reason. We got a lot of young people really struggling to find their way. And unfortunately, I think society's giving them worse advice than they've ever given. I mean, it's never been good, no question. Right? But yeah, share this with young folks, who are struggling. So anyway, have a great weekend. Eric, can't thank you enough. God bless you and yours, man. And we'll get you back on at some point.
Number love.
All right, man.
Okay, bye.
All right, you guys, have a wonderful weekend. And thanks for listening today. You're listening to the Know Your Risk podcast. Download and subscribe at Know Your Risk podcast.
Investment advice cannot be given without a client service agreement. Zach Abraham is an investment advisor representative of Trek Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor. Bulwark Capital Management is a marketing name only and does not carry a separate registration.